This episode of Gnoggin is brought to you by me, Arceus, creator of the Pokemon universe. And check out this golden emblem around my body. It's quite nice. You may be thinking, how does an interdimensional llama deity afford such sick blingage? And that is a secret I'm willing to tell you, as in order to earn human currency, I need to partake in human things. And in this case, it's swag bucks. It's just so easy. You just click the link in the description to sign up, and right away you can start earning points by doing extremely simple human tasks, such as watching videos, playing games, shopping around for special offers, and of course, taking surveys. And after you gather together enough points, you can exchange them for gift cards or even real cash directly into your PayPal account. It's so easy and convenient that even you humans can do it. I'd recommend buying this amazing necklace to show your reverence towards yours truly. Maybe then I'll spare you. Now, where were you? Oh yes, you wanted to watch a video all about me. Oh, well I am quite magnificent, so I don't blame you. Well, be sure to check out Swagbucks with the link in the description and start earning today.
Arceus is the all-powerful creator of the Pokemon universe. In canon, it's all types at once thanks to its plates, but in gameplay mechanics, this obviously doesn't work under the current Pokemon engine, so to compromise, Arceus is able to hold on to plate items. There is one plate per type, and depending on the plate being held, Arceus in-game is that type. The same now applies with Z-Crystals too. But what if Arceus were all types at once in the game as well? What would that balance out to? What would its strengths and what would its weaknesses be? Would it truly become perfectly well-balanced and all-powerful? Or would there be any easy, glaring weakness to exploit? Is there perhaps an easy way to defeat a god? Let's find out.
I'll be sure to take notes.
So, let's start of course with Arceus as normal type. So, the way he normally is. So right away, we have a weakness to fighting type and an immunity to ghost. In fact, why don't we just get all of the immunities out of the way first so that we don't have to calculate them in as we go along. Normal is immune to ghost, and ghost is immune to normal and fighting. Steel is immune to poison, and fairy is immune to dragon. Flying is immune to ground, and ground is immune to electric, and dark is immune to psychic. So, he gets, right away, our mighty Arceus is immune to 7 types! Well, that's good. That means that's 7 types we don't have to quite think too hard about. So, normal is pretty useless, then, since Arceus is immune to fighting here, and normal isn't super effective against anything. So, how about we go ahead and just move right ahead and add the fighting type now. This gives us a weakness to flying and fairy. Not psychic though, since dark type is immune to it, remember. Plus, this adds a resistance to bug, dark, and rock. And now adding in the ability to fly, we gain a weakness to ice and rock, but not electric thankfully, due to that immunity. And bug gets resisted again, along with grass, and fighting is resisted further. Though I'm not sure how you can further resist something that you are already immune to. Before we move on to another type, now is a good time to bring up why this is all super interesting. The fighting type gave Arceus a resistance to rock, but now adding flying, it gains a weakness to rock, so they cancel each other out, and now Arceus is just normally affected by rock. So it'll be interesting to see which types balance out and which ones will be super effective and whatnot at the end. Arceus is also poisonous, obviously. I mean, look at it. It definitely just screams poison. But adding the poison type adds some more resistances: bug, grass, and fairy. And it would add 2 weaknesses, but both of poison's weaknesses our great Arceus is immune to, those being psychic and ground. Speaking of which, let's add ground now. New weaknesses are grass, ice, and water, and we can add another resistance to rock. And so, let's add rock next. No other Pokemon can rock harder than Arceus. Rock adds a lot. It resists fire, flying, normal, and poison, so again, Arceus cannot be poisoned. I've got to stop mentioning the useless ones that it's immune to, otherwise this video is just going to keep getting longer and longer. And Arceus now has more weaknesses, those being water, steel, ground, grass, and fighting.
Hold it! It's immune to fighting, idiot.
Right. Now, looking at Arceus, it's pretty easy to assume that it's a big metalhead. Its favorite bands including Lamb of God, Black Sabbath, Golgoroth, Exodus, and Tenacious D. And being a metalhead makes Arceus Steel-type as well, granting it a huge list of resistances. Applicable here are its resistances to Bug, Fairy, Flying, Grass, Ice, Rock, and Steel. And only one added weakness: Fire. Alright, so that whole Arceus listening to metal joke was pretty bad, so I'll make sure not to bug you anymore with jokes like that. Bug type is an odd one for Arceus to be. It doesn't look like a bug. Here, we add the weakness to Fire, Flying, and Rock, and a resistance to Grass. Arceus being God and all, and theoretically based on the Judeo-Christian God, there are clearly some ghostly elements involved. Ghost is weak to itself and dark, and it resists Bug and Poison. And now we reach the elemental types. Starting by adding Fire, Arceus gains a weakness to Water and Rock, and resistances to Bug, Fairy, Fire, Grass, Ice, and Steel. Dang, Fire is actually pretty good. How is that fair and balanced with the other starter types? With Water, it gains a weakness to Grass and a resistance to Fire, Ice, Steel, and Water. With Grass, there's a weakness to Bug, Fire, Flying, and Ice, and resistances to Grass and Water. And with Electric, we don't get much more beyond another resistance to Flying and Steel. It's a bit shocking, I know, but I'm not funny. But don't you let my lack of good humor give you the cold shoulder, because we're giving Arceus the Ice type now. Living primarily in space, it tends to get pretty chilly after all. Ice, however, is only resistant to Ice, but weak to Fire, Rock, and Steel. And while Arceus is up there in space doing its everyday thing of creating more and more universes for its multiverse, it clearly needs psychic abilities to do those things. And Psychic type adds further weaknesses from Bug, Ghost, and Dark, and adds no resistances due to Arceus being immune already to all of Psychic's resistances. It's really odd to think of Arceus as Dark. After all, in Japanese, the Dark type is known as the Evil type, and it's kinda weird to think of an almighty creator as being evil, but I guess knowing all means that you know how to be evil too. Plus, have you seen that Arceus movie? Arceus is like Shadow the Hedgehog level of edge. Anyway, the Dark type weaknesses that apply to Arceus are Bug and Fairy, and it adds a resistance to Dark. And now we reach the final stretch, and arguably the more powerful and magical of the types, Dragon and Fairy. Fairy will add a weakness to Steel and a resistance to Dark and Bug. And Dragon gets a weakness to Dragon, Fairy, and Ice, and resistance to Water, Grass, and Fire. So now that we have everything written down, what are we left with? Well, one thing is for sure. Besides fighting Arceus with Pokemon it's immune to, you also would not want to fight Arceus with a Grass Bug Pokemon, as Arceus resists both of those types 3 times over. And as for the other types, Arceus still resists Dark and Steel as well, but breaks even with Water, Fire, Flying, and Ice-type Pokemon, so they are a fair deal. But if you intend to beat Arceus, to defeat God, you would want to bring a Pokemon team consisting of Rock and Fairy Pokemon, as those are the only weaknesses it has, and only one time over. So basically, bring a Mega Deontay. That would be mortifying to Arceus. I can picture it now, just Arceus, the all-powerful god, standing atop Spear Pillar, being almighty and powerful as he is, and you send out a pink, pretty princess thing, and Arceus kneels in fear.
Blah! Fairy Pokemon ruined the meta.
Though, something to think about is that some type immunities can go away. For example, moves like Foresight and Odor Sleuth removes Ghost's immunity from normal and fighting type attacks. However, in this case, even if he removed those resistances, Arceus resists normal twice over, but fighting breaks even, dealing traditional damage, so it wouldn't quite be worth the time. Miracle Eye, however, would remove the immunity from Psychic, which also breaks even. However, with Gravity, Arceus loses the immunity from Ground type for 5 turns. And holy butts! Arceus is weak to Ground 3 times over, but only for those 5 turns. But still, Egad! This brings me back to Gen 1 all over again. You just spam Earthquake repeatedly. Never use another move ever, because why would you? That's how you win in Gen 1.
Gen 1ers are garbage.
Curiously though, Gravity is a Psychic type move, which Arceus would also be immune to due to its Dark typing. So you would have to use Miracle Eye to allow you to hit it with Psychic moves, and then use Gravity to ground it. I guess that's the strategy then.
So theoretically speaking, if I wanted to kill Arceus, what would I have to do?
Well, I'm not an expert when it comes to the more competitive side of Pokemon, but I'd assume Mega Deontay for sure, and maybe a Carbink just for that extra Rock Fairy type. Deontay would know Gravity, and then you would want your other Pokemon to be faster than Arceus so that you can at least hit it before it kills you, and at least one of them should know Miracle Eye. After using Miracle Eye, then Gravity, you'll want to just wail on it with Earthquake again and again. Probably use a Ground Z move. I'd probably also send out a Salazzle first and use Toxic. Arceus is normally immune to poison, but Salazzle's ability to poison Steel-type Pokemon overwrites that immunity. With Toxic, you get about 6 turns to survive before Arceus is gone. Another idea would be to use Foresight or Odor Sleuth to allow normal-type moves to hit Ghost Pokemon, and then use Perish Song. Boom! 4-ish turns later, you win. Just gotta survive those 4 turns. And something to think about regarding that survivability is that Arceus can use Judgment, a move that changes types based on whatever type Arceus is. And considering that Arceus is all types, I assume it can choose whichever type it wants to hit you with, most likely your current Pokemon's #1 weakness, and it would hit with a very strong attack that cannot miss with a stab bonus. So no matter what, your team is going to get wrecked. It's all about wrecking Arceus before it can wreck you. Just gotta set up those strategies and then tank it out to survive, and then you're good. Or come to think of it, you could just use 100% Zygarde, because 100% Zygarde could totally wreck him. Its signature move, 1000 Arrows, is a very powerful ground-type move that is already capable of hitting flying things, and you could power it up with a Z Crystal to immense power levels. Leave it to the Z Pokemon to bring an end to the beginning, the Alpha Pokemon. It's pretty poetic. I wonder if that's just a coincidence or if Game Freak actually knew about all this and decided to make the Z Pokemon ground because they just knew that ground was Arceus' biggest weakness. That'd be pretty cool.
Time to kill a god.
Yep, you have fun with that. I'll stay here with my figures. Thank you so much for watching this little adventure into Pokemon type advantages and figuring stuff out. It's super cool, super fun. I hope you enjoyed this video. And until next time, be sure to never stop using your noggin.